Welcome. Tonight, allow your mind to travel back in time, not to war nor conquest, but to something quieter, slower, more delicate. Imagine yourself in a modest Viking village. The cold sea is a constant hum in the distance. The wind rolls gently over grass-covered rooftops. A wedding is coming. It's not a royal affair, nor a grand feast for gods and jarls, but a union of two local souls. Farmers, perhaps. Children of tradesmen, people like you, or someone you once knew. The preparations are slow, full of meaning, and heavy with old customs. Days pass like drifting clouds. Work is steady but not rushed. There's time to think, time to breathe, time to remember how different the world once was. This is not a tale of love at first sight or passionate drama. It is instead a story of obligation and hope, bone-deep fatigue and small joys, mothers braiding hair with quiet fingers, and fathers weighing gifts in silence, of smoke curling from hearths and the scent of pine sap on hands. So settle in, let your body rest, let your thoughts soften, and let us begin. With the gentle rhythm of everyday life as a village prepares for a wedding, the days before a Viking wedding are filled with work, but not the urgent, panicked kind. Instead, it is a calm and constant tide of preparation. You wake to a gray sky, the kind that doesn't promise rain or sun, just mist. Damp air clings to your skin as you step outside your longhouse, your breath visible in the morning chill. In the distance, you hear someone splitting wood. That's Kettle, the bride's older brother. He's been tasked with preparing the firewood for the wedding feast. His axe falls in a slow rhythm. Not fast, not frantic, but steady. It's the same motion, over and over. Inside another home, the bride's mother is weaving linen. Her loom is old and creaks with every pull, but her hands are practiced. She hums a low melody, an old tune her own mother sang, as she shapes the cloth that will be cut into a head covering for her daughter. It's not meant to impress. It's meant to last. Further down the muddy path, two young boys are gutting fish by the river. One complains. The other says nothing. Neither knows why they've been given this job, but it keeps their hands busy, keeps them out of the way. In a field not far off, goats mill about, oblivious. Oh, girl. Scatters hay in their pen and mutters under her breath, just thinking about her own future wedding, distant as it may be, and wondering if the gods will give her someone kind. Or just someone. Life in the village carries on, but with a subtle shift. Everything feels expectant. People move as they always do, carrying buckets, patching roofs, drying herbs. But their minds are elsewhere. The wedding is coming. At the blacksmith's forge, the groom's uncle works slowly on a gift, a belt buckle shaped like Thor's hammer. It's not ornamental. It's practical. It's heavy. The kind of thing that will last a lifetime. It's maybe longer. Meanwhile, the bride and groom do not speak much. It's not uncommon. They know each other, but they are not close. Their families arrange the match. Love is not a requirement. Survival is. Still, the bride pauses to watch him carry sacks of grain to the hall. His steps are slow, measured. She does not smile, but she does not turn away. The village hall where the feast will be held is being swept. A few older women scrub the tables with wet cloths, muttering about how much meat is needed and how little meat they can spare. A man from a neighboring village arrives, walking beside a cart in it, barrels of honey, a wedding gift, speaks little, accepts bread, nods, then turns back to the road. These are not people of flowery words. As the sun sets, the village becomes quiet again. Smoke rises from chimneys. The animals are still. People tuck themselves indoors, resting from their labors and preparing for another day of the same. The bride sits with her mother by the fire. Her hair is being unbraided. Tomorrow, it will be washed and woven again, this time with fresh herbs tucked in. A small symbol of renewal. Outside, the wind picks up. Not strong, just enough to rattle the roof. Another quiet night in a quiet village. But something is changing. Something is coming. A wedding, a joining. And perhaps in time, something like happiness. Not all preparations for a Viking wedding were tangible. Some were rooted in things unseen, beliefs, rituals, and echoes of the gods. Imagine yourself now seated by the hearth again, where a wise old woman stirs a bubbling pot of herbs. The fire crackles low. She hums a half-forgotten melody as she prepares the bridal blessing smoke, a mix of juniper and angelica, used to purify the wedding garments and chase away mischievous spirits. In Viking belief, marriage wasn't merely a contract between families or the start of a new household. It was a spiritual journey, a joining not just of bodies, but of luck or hamingja, soul energy that guided fortune and fate. The merging of two people meant their fates became bound, as tightly as the braided leather cords they would wear on their wrists. Superstition crept into every corner of the event. The bride must not stumble when stepping out of her house on the wedding days. Such a misstep was seen as a bad omen. If the winds howled too loudly or a raven circled the home, it was time to delay, lest fate be tempted. The gods themselves were never far. Odin, the wanderer and father of men, was sometimes invoked for strength. Thor, with his hammer, was the favorite of grooms. A small replica of Mjolnir, carved in wood or bone, might be slipped under the bride's pillow the night before the wedding to bless her fertility and protect her womb. Rituals were crafted to honor ancestors and spirits. A horn of mead might be poured out onto the earth in remembrance of deceased kin. It was believed they, too, watched the ceremony unseen, but present, lending their blessing from beyond the grave. Even animals played a symbolic role. Cats, sacred to the goddess Freya, were welcome visitors. Seeing one cross the threshold on the eve of the wedding was considered a sign of her approval and omen of love's favor. And then there were the runes. On long winter nights, elders would carve them carefully into staves of wood, whispering quiet prayers. For the bride, they might use Jifith, rune of gifts and generosity. For the groom, perhaps Tiwaz, representing duty and honor. These tiny totems were carried in pockets or tied into garments as hidden protectors close to the skin. The air was thick, not only with excitement, but with meaning. Everything was a sign, everything a message, if you knew how to look. Dreams were interpreted, sudden feelings studied. The wedding wasn't just a human affair, it was a cosmic alignment, a careful dance between the living and the divine. Now, as twilight fades into deep night, the fire in the hall crackles low. You imagine that old woman again, her hands resting on her knees, her eyes closed. She hums still, rocking gently in rhythm. Her song is not one you recognize, but somehow it soothes. In this silence, we drift gently toward the final preparations and into the world of celebration and union. Let's move there now. Imagine him now, not a warrior, not a hero of saga or shield wall, just a young man with calloused hands and a quiet face. Well, his name might be Eirik, or maybe Halvard. It doesn't really matter. He's someone who could have lived. And perhaps, in a way, did. He wakes before dawn, always has. Years of fishing, farming, hauling logs. The rhythm of waking early is etched into his bones. But today, the weight in his chest is a little heavier. It's not fear, not excitement, just the awareness that something is ending and something else is beginning. He rises in silence, dresses in woolen layers, and steps outside. His boots crunch over frost-touched earth. The air is thick with the scent of pine smoke, and distant roosters announce the hour like clockwork crows. He makes his way to the barn, not because there's work to do, although there always is, but because he needs the quiet, needs to breathe among the hay and the animals where things make sense, where nothing is expected of him except patience and sweat. He runs a hand along the oxen's flank, feeling the warmth of its side. The animal stirs, then settles, and it seems to understand the gravity of this day. Later that morning, his father gives him a small axe. It's not ceremonial. It's not for battle. It's the axe he used to build their home. The handle is worn smooth. The edge has seen hundreds of winters, but it's whole, sturdy, useful. This is your bride gift, his father says, nothing more. It's enough. Bride gifts are not about wealth or flash. They're promises. Symbols. This one says, I will build. I will work. I will provide. He accepts it without words. The rest of the morning is full of small tasks. He helps his brothers catch and clean fish for the evening meal. He lifts firewood into place. He sharpens a knife. None of it is special. That's the point. Life continues, even on the edge of something new. Around midday, he visits the seeress. She is not a witch, exactly, or a prophet, but people listen to her when they are uncertain. She lives at the edge of the village, in a house draped with dried herbs and carved bones. She speaks little. Al offers him a simple piece of cloth with symbols stitched in ochre thread. It is meant to keep away ill luck. He does not ask how it works. He simply places it in the small pouch he wears around his neck. The sun crawls across the sky. Clouds gather. The air grows damp, heavy with unshed rain. By afternoon, he walks alone into the woods. There is a small clearing he has visited since boyhood, a place where the wind feels different, softer. He sits on a mossy rock and thinks about the girl. He knows her name, has heard her laugh, has seen her carry buckets, braid her sister's hair, tend the goats. But they have not spoken much. That's normal. This is not a romance. It's a joining of two houses, a practicality still. He hopes she will not hate him. In the clearing, he speaks aloud, though no one hears. Not even the gods, perhaps. But the act of speaking matters. It shapes the day, makes it real. As dusk descends, he returns to the village. His tunic is simple, but clean. His boots are freshly oiled. The axe rests across his back, strapped in place with a piece of leather his mother braided when he was 12. His breath fogs the air as he enters the longhouse. The fire is burning low. His brothers nod. Mother adjusts his collar and does not cry. He eats without tasting the food. Dried meat, something warm in a clay bowl. Outside, the wind rises again. When he sleeps, it is not deep. His dreams are fog and firelight and voices he does not recognize. Tomorrow, he will marry. Tonight, he rests between two lives. Not all preparations for a Viking wedding were tangible. Some were rooted in things unseen, beliefs, rituals, and echoes of the gods. Imagine yourself now seated by the hearth again, where a wise old woman stirs a bubbling pot of herbs. Fire crackles low. She hums a half-forgotten melody as she prepares the bridal blessing smoke, a mix of juniper, and Angelica used to purify the wedding garments and chase away mischievous spirits. In Viking belief, marriage wasn't merely a contract between families or the start of a new household. It was a spiritual journey, a joining not just of bodies, but of luck, or hamingja, solenergy that guided fortune and fate. The merging of two people meant their fates became bound, as tightly as the braided leather cords they would wear on their wrists. The bride must not stumble when stepping out of her house on the wedding day. Such a misstep was seen as a bad omen. If the winds howled too loudly or a raven circled the home, it was time to delay, lest fate be tempted. The gods themselves were never far. Odin, the wanderer and father of men, was sometimes invoked for strength. Thor, with his hammer, was the favorite of grooms, small replica of Melanir, carved in wood or bone, be slipped under the bride's pillow the night before the wedding to bless her fertility and protect her womb. Rituals were crafted to honor ancestors and spirits. A horn of mead might be poured out onto the earth in remembrance of deceased kin. It was believed they, too, watched the ceremony unseen, but present, lending their blessing from beyond the grave. Even animals played a symbolic role. Cats, sacred to the goddess Freya, were welcome visitors. Seeing one cross the threshold on the eve of the wedding was considered a sign of her approval and omen of love's favor. And then there were the runes. On long winter nights, elders would carve them carefully into staves of wood, whispering quiet prayers. For the bride, they might use Jafutha, rune of gifts and generosity. For the groom, perhaps Tiwaz, representing duty and honor. These tiny totems were carried in pockets or tied into garments as hidden protectors close to the skin. The air was thick, not only with excitement, but with meaning. Everything was a sign, everything a message if you knew how to look. Dreams were interpreted, sudden feelings studied. The wedding wasn't just a human affair, it was a cosmic alignment, a careful dance between the living and the divine. Now, as twilight fades into deep night, the fire in the hall crackles low. You imagine that old woman again, her hands resting on her knees, her eyes closed. She hums still, rocking gently in rhythm. Her song is not one you recognize, but somehow it soothes. And in this silence, we drift gently toward the final preparations and into the world of celebration and union. Let's move there now. Dawn breaks softly, casting pale golden light over the thatched roofs of the village. The long-awaited day has arrived. There is no fanfare, no trumpets. It's just the rhythmic sound of footsteps over frost-laced ground. The world feels reverent. Still, imagine yourself moving through this quiet world, past neighbors straightening cloaks, smoothing tunics, adjusting braids. Even the animals seem subdued, as if they, too, sense something important is about to unfold. The bride is cloistered in her longhouse, surrounded by female kin. They dress her slowly, in layers, each one symbolic. A clean underdress, the color of cream, heavier woolen gown, embroidered at the hem with interlocking knot symbols of unity and eternity, and over her shoulders, a blue cloak lined with fur. Blue, the color of fidelity. Her hair is unbound until the final moment. Braiding it is a ritual in itself, done by her closest friend or sister, fingers working silently, reverently. Each twist of hair is like a spell, binding the past to the future, childhood to womanhood. Into the braids they weave beads, feathers, tiny bone charms each, one carrying meaning, each one a talisman for protection, fertility, wisdom. When she is ready, the bride is given a circlet of silver to wear upon her brow, passed down through generations. It once belonged to a grandmother she never met, and before that, to a woman whose name is only whispered now. Across the village, the groom prepares as well. His ritual is quieter, solitary. He sharpens a blade not for violence, but as a symbolic act, a gesture of readiness, of vigilance. He wears a cloak given by his father, its edges frayed by time and battle. A carved amulet rests against his chest. Before they meet, they both pause separately to honor their ancestors. The groom walks alone into a grove of birch trees. Offering a small token, perhaps a carved figurine, perhaps a braid of wheat, the bride lights a candle and places it at the threshold of her home. These quiet moments belong to no one else. Then, with the village gathered, the bride and groom step forward, not together, but toward each other, slowly, deliberately. The moment carries weight, and everyone senses it. There are no priests, no written vows, only silence, and then a joining of hands. Their fingers intertwine, and that gesture alone becomes the vow. Someone speaks an elder, perhaps, not loudly, but with calm authority. They speak of Filgia, the guiding spirit that follows each person. They speak of Hamingja and how it now flows between them. They speak of storms and hearth fires, of bitter winters and brief summers, and how only together can such a life be weathered. A bowl of earth is passed around, and each guest drops in a pinch of grain, of salt, of ash. These represent sustenance, wisdom, and memory. When the bowl returns to the couple, they each press a hand into the mixture. This, too, is part of the union. Then the feast begins. Imagine the warm, golden glow of torchlight. Long wooden tables filled with roasted meats, root vegetables, and dense loaves of bread. Horns of meat are passed from hand to hand, their contents sweet and strong. The bride and groom sit together at the high table, laughing now, a quiet happiness settling between them. Children dart between benches, chasing shadows. An old man plucks at a lyre, his song simple, repeating. Women lean in to whisper gossip, while young men boast too loudly of imagined victories. The air is thick with the scent of roasted lamb, fresh herbs, and wood smoke. As the night deepens, the tone softens. Guests begin to drift towards sleep, curling under furs on the benches, lulled by mead and memory. The fire burns low, and you still present, still watching, feel that same softness settle over you. A rhythm, steady and slow. The rhythm of a life shaped by land, by sky, by custom and courage. A life not your own, but not so unfamiliar. You've seen the struggle, the reverence, the preparation, the joy, and now, as the fire becomes embers, and the last laughter fades into the folds of the night, you drift with it into the quiet. Let us leave the celebration here. And so, the day ends. The village has returned to stillness. Snow settles gently atop the rooftops, blanketing the longhouses, the earth, the sleeping livestock. The fire in the great hall has dwindled to a soft orange glow, the last flicker of celebration fading into warmth and memory. Somewhere in the dark, a dog shifts and sighs. Owl calls out in the forest beyond. But mostly, there is silence. You've traveled through time tonight back to a world of wood smoke and wool, of braided hair and ancestral spirits. You've stepped through the quiet intensity of a Viking wedding, the preparations, the customs, the reverence. You've walked in their boots, sat at their table, felt the weight of winter and the joy of ritual. You've seen how even in a world of struggle and cold, beauty found a way to bloom in a carved amulet, a flickering candle, a shared cup of mead. And now, as your mind begins to drift and soften, take one final moment to picture that fire crackling softly, steady and warm. Picture the newlyweds, curled beneath a fur cloak, listening to the same wind that whispers outside your window now. Let the rhythm of their lives so far away, yet so familiar, rock you gently towards sleep. There's no need to hold on to the details. Let them fade like mist. The memory of birch trees, of candlelight, of braided hair will stay with you quietly, just beneath the surface. Thank you for journeying through the North tonight. Rest well, dream deeply, and remember, history has its own lullabies. If you listen closely enough, good night.